We are L'Arche Canada, and we're about witnessing and sharing the gifts of all people. Learn more about us today.
This is Rogers TV, Grey County.
Good morning, Diane.
Good morning, Lois.
I can't stop looking around. There's so many cool things in here.
Oh, I know, and I'm such a history buff.
Right?
Positively love the history in this town. But today, we're downtown Owen Sound at a museum, and we're here with Zach. And Zach, tell us about the museum and the name and the times you're open.
So we're here at the Community Waterfront Heritage Center. People around here might also know it as the Marine and Rail Museum. And basically, we look to make displays and exhibits and programs all about Owen Sound's marine, rail, and industrial history. So we are currently in some preparations for getting ready for the season, which will be beginning properly on the May long weekend. Although people can still visit us, they can contact us by email or phone and set up a time to visit. Or sometimes if I hear someone outside ringing the ship bell, I'll come and let them in just to make sure that people still get the opportunities to come and see us, well, whenever they happen to be here.
Oh, that's right. And you're here full time yourself, right?
Yes, I recently was brought on full time. So I was already working as the curator since last year. And now I am taking on the manager role as well. So I'm doing both things, working with the collection, working on exhibits, doing research, as well as working on setting up new events and working with community partners and setting up all kinds of arrangements and partnerships to see what we can accomplish.
Now, you're not in here all by yourself sometimes, right? You have volunteers that come in and...
Yes, so we have a whole lot of volunteers and they do a lot of different things. So some of them will help us by watching the front desk. They'll talk to people about the things that they know from living in Owen Sound or maybe working at local industries. Some of them also will help us work on our model trains because they can take a bit of upkeep sometimes. And it's really good because we have a lot of people who, well, that's their hobby and they know a lot about that and they're able to keep the trains running on time, so to speak.
Right. I had no idea, Diane, that there were so many little trains in here that move. I'm bringing my grandkids in here because they're going to be so thrilled.
So am I.
See that? Yeah.
Be afraid.
Well,
yeah. It's behind glass.
Yes.
I'm used to it. And hey, that's what we've got it set up, especially for people who are interested in like that. We have one train that's running just throughout, but the other one, we've got a button, so they get to press it and to set it off themselves. So they get control over it as well, which is probably almost more dangerous.
Right? Where's the button?
It's right over here.
Okay.
So if you come over here, you'll see our
train?
many display cases. Does one of you want to press it?
She's a crazy driver. I don't know.
I think Lois should press it. Oh, that is so cool.
Look at. Oh, look.
You can see our big G scale with some of the things that they would have been shipping out of here. We've got a propeller from William Kennedy and Sons and a steel craft boat that which would have been made by Russell Brothers.
Right.
That is so cool.
So,
oh, there's a winery in here.
Oh, well, this is called Taylortown.
so this model over here, this diorama, was brought in just last year. We worked with the Blue Water Modelers to make it. And this was based off of photos of Owen Sound in the 1950s. So you can actually see where we are right in here, this building. But in the back, at the moment, you have to crouch a bit. You can see the buildings that would have been across the street at Kennedy and Sons, later Black Closs and Kennedy.
So the bridge over 10th Street would be to the left then, right? Down here?
Oh, yes,
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
Right to scale, actually, the size of the homes, and some of these homes are still there.
Are you actively looking for items? You're the curator as well. Like, what would you be after? What would you look at?
So we collect things based on, well, those three main categories, marine, rail, and industrial history. We are interested in archival documents, in objects related to the work that would have been done here, and we will also still accept some things even if they're not from Owen Sound, just if they're still connected to that work that we do. Photos are a big one as well. Our photo collection has over 4,000 images in it, and we can pull from those. We can use them for other people as well. People can put in image requests, but we're giving them out in that way, but also accepting them. And sometimes you can get some really good stuff that people think aren't that significant or important. A lot of the time people think that something has to be from a big momentous event in order to be worth something. And I've seen it in multiple donations that people will try to kind of up the importance of it as if they think that we won't want it otherwise. Whereas actually a lot of what we're interested in are those relatively mundane things that tell you a lot about the day-to-day operations of
how life was.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, right.
Steve Briggs is a really big proponent of the archival pictures that he posts of way back when. And you're right, it could be someone's home, you know, and then you get all these people commenting about that was my grandparents' home, or that was my aunt and uncle's, or I lived there, which to me is really fun just to even see it. So not being from here, it gives you a sense of.
And what was interesting when you were talking before, you're from Sault Ste. Marie, so there's quite a tie, because back in the day, there was a fair, or one of the boats from here went to Sault Ste. Marie, did it not?
Yeah, so there was actually a few. It was a common stop because the locks in Sault Ste. Marie take you up to Lake Superior. Yeah. And for the Canadian Pacific Railway, that was actually incredibly important, because for a long time, Owen Sound was that connection between here and Port Arthur, now Thunder Bay, to connect it with the railway that hadn't connected to the rest of Ontario yet. But in addition, there were a lot of communities that you couldn't reach any other way for a really long time. And so boats operating out of Owen Sound would go up there. The most significant one for me was the Norgoma, because it was for a long time a museum ship up in Sault Ste. Marie. But there were a number of others as well. The Normac, and I believe the Caribou also went up there. It was a common location, both for passing through and as the final destination of, well, maybe a cruise that was going through, you know, Manitoulin Island and a number of locations on the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you were going to show us some other artifacts that you had?
Yes, so I have some over here. So here we have, I'll just pass by, a case. This was one of the ones done by a student about the sinking of the Hibu or Haibu. I hear it pronounced both ways by locals.
Right.
And so a lot of these objects are from it. It sank not far from here. It was later raised back up, but it didn't keep operating around here. I think it eventually sank again down in South America. And then over here, we have a collection of objects that I've pulled to kind of do a good job of showing those different parts of our collection. So here we have a life ring from the Nor Isle, and then a diving helmet here, which would have been used for underwater welding and some work on ships. That's from the early 1900s.
How much would that weigh?
Oh,
try it on, Diane.
Okay.
It's possible to pick up, but I wouldn't want to be wearing it for too long. And then from the rail side of things, we have a lantern, which would have been used partly for signaling and just as a hand lantern.
Is it kerosene or
I believe this one might have been coal-fired.
Coal-fired.
Our last two items, which kind of represent marine, rail, and industry, in my opinion, because you get this, which is not actually a propeller, but this is a propeller pattern. So they use this to make the molds for propellers over at Kennedy's. And then, of course, they're in an industry that's in Owen Sound, making pieces for the marine, for boats, which would then be shipped out on trains. So it's a very good way of showing off all of those elements of what we cover here. Similarly, this wheel, this one's a bit heftier, would have been for a Russell Brothers boat. So they made a lot of stuff from little boats for the logging industry on rivers to a bit larger ones. Like they made two of the boats that were Maids of the Mist at Niagara Falls, as well as one Coast Guard vessel.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There's
I
actually
did not
a
either.
decent history of shipbuilding in Owen Sound that is easy to miss, because when people think shipbuilding, South Georgian Bay, their minds go over to Collingwood.
Right.
But actually there was a great deal of that done here as well. But in this case, the boats that were built here would also have been shipped on trains, because they were small enough that they could just be put on a car. You might have to cut it in half, but it will still fit on a train car, and then shipped off across Canada as far as BC.
Wow.
How heavy did you say this is? Sorry.
I don't have an exact weight for it, but it is quite hefty. Let's see. I've lifted heavier things, but I've definitely lifted lighter ones as well. And especially when you get underwater and you've got all that bearing down on you.
Yes.
I feel like at the very least you're going to be feeling some claustrophobia.
Oh my gosh.
these artifacts are so amazing. I just love it. So are there other artifacts that you have?
Yeah, so this is just a small sample. We have the ones in our displays, but we also have them stored in various cabinets and in our attic. And basically we tried to cycle through, we put in new displays so that we can cover different subjects that haven't been gone over before, as well as having some where we're just going to be rotating through the things that people don't often get to see. Because we do have a lot of things that do often just stay behind the scenes, and we're trying to get those out and in front of the public a bit more.
So Zach, tell us a bit more about how the trains got started here in Owen Sound.
So the trains in Owen Sound started in 1873, so it's actually 150 years ago this year, when the Toronto Graham Bruce was the first line that came into here. Not long after that, they were taken over by the Canadian Pacific Railway, who used this as a terminus to connect to their ships that would go up to connect with the rest of the railway going out west in Port Arthur. But then you also got a bit more. We actually had the train stations on both sides of the harbor. On the far side, we had Canadian Pacific. And then here, we first got Grand Trunk in 1894, which then got taken over by the Canadian National Railway, who built this building in the 1930s and continued to offer both passenger and freight service. So they would link up with the boats that came into the harbor, which is how Owen Sound managed to grow so much in the late 1800s and early 1900s, is that you're getting the shipping from the boats that meet up with the trains. And the thing about trains is they can run all year round, which is part of what makes them so important, because before, boats had to go over to Collingwood to move a lot of the freight that they wanted to shift. But you can't do that in the winter because the Great Lakes don't like you being on them really past October. So they would have gone over there and you really suffer in the winter. And then eventually they managed to get the trains here. And now all of a sudden, not only are you getting that great link, but you can get to other parts of Canada and North America really year round.
Right. So from Owen Sound would go to Toronto, or what? You could get to Collingwood from here by train, or what were the
So
routes?
You couldn't get to Collingwood. There was a line that was going to come here, but they only ever made it as far as Meaford. You would have been able to get to Toronto on one line, and then on the other, which was a branch line off of the one they had going up to Wyerton, you would have been able to get down to Guelph.
So that's why we have the big grain elevators here, and still received product in those great big buildings as well.
Yeah, so obviously they don't have the trains anymore. The last trains that ran here were in the 90s, but they are still used by these ships, and they would have been used for that same link. And that's actually the second grain elevators that we have here. The first ones were built by Canadian Pacific, and they were on the other side of the harbor. They burned in 1911, and after that, there was just, over 10 years where they didn't have any, and the city actually suffered for it because they couldn't get someone else to build a new one until eventually in the 1920s, the city decided we're going to do it ourselves. And that's how you get the ones that are currently standing there today.
Now I see a lot of trucks coming and taking huge loads to all parts of Ontario or this region, which brings me to the question about the ships that were here as well, that they used to pick up product and go different areas. And I understand we've got a whole new section that's all about the boats that were here in Owen Sound, and we'll talk about that when we come back.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Welcome to the traditional, ancestral, unceded territory of the Stalo people. The Stalo are people of the river. I'm so thankful for the courage and resiliency of our ancestors who lived on this land since time immemorial. Each of us have gifts from the Creator, and our Creator has a plan and purpose to be fulfilled in our territory. As we embrace our traditional teachings, we can lead the next generation into the fullness of what our Creator designed. Our shared history reveals a broken relationship. But as all Canadians commit to hear truth, acknowledge injustice, we can learn to walk in our traditional way, Letsamot, with a good heart and a good mind. Then all of our lives will be enriched. Kwasai.
Don't
don't forget to join us next week on Grey County Life on Rogers TV.
And we're going to be talking about how important volunteers are for National Volunteer Week.
Welcome back to What's Happening Here. We're in the marine side of things now.
Yes, we are. Look at this. Tell us about this, Zach.
So this wheel is actually the auxiliary wheel from a ship called the Athabasca, which was owned by the Canadian Pacific Railway. So it's not the main one they would have used, but if something went wrong with their main steering, then they would have been able to use this wheel instead and still have some control over the ship.
Okay. And there's a lot of other steering wheels up there too.
Yes, top right is from the Manitoba, the one with the gold around it, and then the one below it, the silver with the wooden handles, that would have been used on a Russell Brothers built boat. So it would have been built here, but probably sent somewhere else.
Right.
It's amazing. We're looking at all of these ships. There's the Chichimon you've got there.
Yes, but younger people might not recognize the current colors. So this was from the 90s and up to 2002 or 2004, when it was run by Ontario Northland before the Owen Sound Transportation Company started operating on its own again. But it will be familiar for anyone currently in Owen Sound because it's currently parked just outside the museum.
Yes, it is. You have an awful lot of ships that are in glass cases. Now, not all of them were built here, but they did come to us as a port, correct?
Yes, so Owen Sound was a home port or a port visited by a lot of different types of ships. So you get ones like this called the Harrison, which was a tugboat that was built here and operated by, well, the Harrison family.
Is this the steering wheel from it?
Yes.
The
so
ship's
this
wheel?
wheel was from the tugboat, the Harrison.
Hold on! We're going down.
So we have it here. You need to be gentle with it.
Oh, sorry.
At the
It
same
was a
time,
stormy day.
I mean, it happens to the best of us.
Oh, yeah.
But we have it, and it's definitely taken a bit of a rougher beating. We try to take care of it, but sometimes, well, kids will be kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you saying something about me?
You know what's interesting is this looks like a remake from Lost in Space.
Yeah. That's a cool.
It looks like it would be
call
more
that?
space than the helmet that we saw in the other gallery.
Yeah.
And so this is the compass that would have been used on the Harrison.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. And that's how they actually ran the boat, the directions they would go. And
Yep. The tugboat was built in the early 1900s, so they didn't have any fancy navigation systems. You've got your basic instruments like the compass that are going to tell you what direction you're going. And
Celestial was, navigation was big too, right?
yes.
Yes, by this point, I think they had enough charts of the areas they would have been in. They probably would have needed that a bit less, but they would have been able to use a combination of just telling the direction you're going, how fast you're going, measuring those types of things, going against the charts that would have told you where everything is, how deep the water is in different locations so that you don't run aground. For tugboats, you're not going to have to worry about that quite as much as some of the bigger ships, but that is one of the big things they had to worry about. So you have to keep an eye on, well, what's underneath you just as much as what's above.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of tragedy on Georgian Bay, right? Like a lot of ships that have gone down, and the weather can be crazy.
Very tricky sometimes, especially because you can get some storms during, well, summer and the peak shipping season. But one of the big ones is also, well, in the later months, things get really rough. So anyone who's heard the song The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald will know about the gales of November. The weather gets especially rough, and there's a lot of ships that you see, they were on their last trip of the season when they went down because the weather just got too rough, and there's only so much that the ship, even the most seasoned sailor can only handle so much bad weather before it just gets too much to manage.
Absolutely. I love the view of the harbor.
You get to stand at the wheel and pretend you're looking out over the water.
Yeah. Yeah, full speed ahead.
Put the pedal to the metal.
Exactly. Then you also have boats that were way back when. That's not like the Blue Nose up there, is it?
That is actually a model of the Blue Nose.
Is it?
So anyone who's seen a Canadian dime will know the Blue Nose. It never came here. Most of the boats in here wouldn't have come here, but there are some incredible models that have been given to us over the years. And so we wanted to display them just partly as a testament to the skill of those model makers.
The Titanic you've got there?
Titanic does actually have a bit of a connection to Canada, if not Owen Sound, because it sank so close to Newfoundland.
Right. Right.
And then other ones like the Edmund Fitzgerald, of course, is probably the most well-known wreck to happen on the Great Lakes up in Lake Superior.
Is that the big one against the wall there?
Yeah.
That's huge.
The Red Freighter.
Yeah.
And what about this one here?
So this is the Alga Rail. It's a self-unloading bulk freighter, which would have been the type of ship at least to come into Owen Sound. There is actually currently a ship that looks quite like it in our harbor called the Algoma Buffalo. And recently we had the Algoma Innovator as well, run by the Algoma Central Corporation. And those are one of the most important types of ships for Owen Sound. And you don't see as many of them as you used to, but you'll still occasionally see them at the very least for layup over the winter when they can't be traveling. They'll come here just as a spot where they can be peacefully idle without, well, you might get some work done on them so that they can be ready for the next season, but not quite as much going on come to Owen Sound.
That's right. And it's always nice to see ships in the harbor, isn't it? I love it. Yeah.
I do too. And I don't live far off the water, and I love watching them come in.
It's quite a sight, isn't it?
It is a wonderful sight.
And some of them turn around before they come in.
Yes.
Or turn around when they come out.
So what is this one?
So this is the Normac. This is an older boat. This was one of the ones that was run by the Owen Sound Transportation Company, although when it was originally built, it was actually a tugboat, but they did a lot of work to modify it to give space for passengers and what was called package freight. And it used to run between here and Sault Ste. Marie, as well as to a lot of the other communities on the upper lakes that didn't have a lot of other ways to access them. And then it also became one of the ferries that went from Tobermory to South Baymouth. The name is actually based on the name of Norman Mackay, who was one of the captains and one of the important executives in the Owen Sound Transportation Company. So as much as you get the Norisle and the Norgoma, which also have that first three letters the same. It's not actually the same reason, because the reason that you get that here is that it was just fully lifted from Norman Mackay's name.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's cool. I didn't realize that.
And that is a passenger boat, you said, right? Yeah.
Doesn't look very big, actually.
No, it was a bit smaller than the boats that came later. The Norisle was built just after World War II. And then the Norgoma, which came later, they were both a bit bigger than it. And then if you're talking size, the Chi-Chi-Mon is bigger than, well, the Norgoma and the Norisle combined. It can carry more cars and more people. Although when you read some sources, they will point out that unfortunately the Chi-Chi-Mon does not carry livestock like we used to.
Oh, okay.
So Zach, tell me, what's one of your favorite things in here?
If I had to pick one of my favorites, I might go with the model of the Manitoba up here. As much as it may not be in as good of condition as some of our other models, the ship does kind of have a special place in Owen Sound. It was actually built here, and it was possibly one of the first steel-hulled ships built in Canada.
Really?
Interesting.
Very interesting. We've just touched on what you have here at the museum. When can people actually come and see all these wonderful things?
So we are opening for our regular hours for the season on May 19th, but you can actually also come even before then. If you just reach out to us by email or phone, you can let us know that you're interested in coming, and we'll find a time when we'd be able to let you in so that you can get your own look at the place and maybe even avoid some of the crowds.
Yeah. Was there anything else you wanted to show us before we leave?
There is, but we're gonna have to go outside for it.
Okay, let's bundle up.
We also have these two boats here. What are they? What are they?
So one is a lifeboat that used to be on the Chi-Chi-Mon, and the other is called the Ancaster. It was built here, and it was actually one of the boats on the last Canadian $1 bill before we switched to using the loonie.
Oh. Well, there's the Chi-Chi-Mon. Won't be here long. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful.
Oh, look at this. Look at it. I don't know what I want, but I want a double, and he's going to have the same.
ID, please.
Very funny.
Bye. Bar's closed. This is a cool spot, Zach.
I love this coach.
Yes.
I love it.
It's available to rent?
Yeah, so we're actually renting out this space, and it's hooked up. As you can see, we have lighting, and then in the summer we get the water hooked up, and the washrooms even work.
I love this dining area. I love this coach. And I see that there are tables and chairs set up so that people can rent it out or use it for special occasions. Is the museum going to be doing anything like that?
Yeah, so we're actually working on some programs and we're hoping to use the coach for that. It can seat 40 people, so we can also use it for meetings. And basically, we can use it, but also so can people from, well, not just Owen Sound, but anyone who's in Owen Sound.
Right.
You can rent out the space. You just have to, again, reach out and we'll give you the form that you need that you can fill out. Tell us what you're going to be using it for, if you're going to be bringing in food and getting it catered, and a whole bunch of information so then we can figure out.
Right. Is there a kitchen or no?
So we have a fridge and freezer where you can store things.
Okay.
We unfortunately aren't set up to actually be able to cook food in here, but it can be brought in very easily because we do have, well, if you need anything kept cold, we're set up for that. And plenty of space for arranging and displaying the food. If, say, you're doing kind of a luncheon or just a buffet style thing, you've got the space along here where you can put different stuff, or the preparation space if you just need to arrange things on the plates before they come out to the tables.
So it wouldn't be available in the winter, I'm assuming?
Not so much. So in the winter, we do have to disconnect the water and things because otherwise it could freeze. Right. But when we're open for the summer, we have it all set up with the lights and water all working. So you're able to come in while the museum's open as well. Generally, we'll make an effort to make sure that you can get out to see it and to use it for personal, private, business events.
Yeah, I think it would be great for service clubs and that, right?
Yes.
Diane? I think, and birthday parties.
And you know what's interesting is it's fully stocked with all the plates and the cups.
Oh,
and
I thought you were going to say it's fully stocked with something else.
Well, there's lots of room for that too, but I was just, it's family TV.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Like the teapots. Royal Albert. Yeah. The only thing, no dishwasher, so that's why I would bring paper. But it's very nice, very nice. Nice and clean.
This is a great idea,
It's
Zach.
a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, we like to make sure that the stuff that we have is here and available for the public. And it's part of why volunteers have spent so much time working on this train to make it so that it is usable and it's accessible, because you can just have it sitting on the tracks, but then what's the point if you're just seeing it from the outside? You're not really getting a full experience.
It's so cool.
Just the historical factor alone of sitting in a train. You know, little kids would think that is so neat.
Oh, I love taking kids out here. You get kids who are so interested in trains and boats, and so having these types of things that you can take them out to see, they lose their minds, they get so excited.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most satisfying parts of the job, in all honesty. It's incredible.
That's wonderful. So we've seen, like I said, we've just touched a little bit on what you have to offer here. If someone wants to come and see it, how would they reach you?
So they can email us at info@waterfrontheritage.ca. And that's generally the easiest way to get a hold of us, because if I'm out of the museum, or if I have to be working remotely or anything like that, I always have access to that. And so it's really the best way of getting a hold of us. And then we can correspond and set up dates, look at times, see what's already claimed, what's available. And we like to work with people in order to make sure that they're going to get the best experience that they can, and see what we can do to make it as good as possible.
Absolutely. I bet you can't wait for this summer. You'll be fully open and yeah.
It's going to be great to have people coming through again after, the months in the off season. You're able to get a lot done, but it gets a lot lonelier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
This has been great.
Thank
You're very
you.
welcome. It's always nice to have people.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.